Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the EduLeaders Speak podcast. We had so much fun on the first one that we just had to come back. So the EduLeaders Speak podcast is an initiative of EduEnhance where we want to give a voice to education leaders in our region, a platform for them to come together, share their insights, get to know each other better, and get to know you better as well. So the topic of today's podcast is early childhood. And as EduEnhance, we focus a lot on K-12 education, but the more we go out there and the more we meet educators in the region, we realize that early childhood is also just as important and something that needs to be looked at because it's always better to start early, right? So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Iram to introduce our guests for today.
Thank you, Bushra. Super excited to be back at our podcast with two experts. We have with us today Ms. Natasha Sorak. She's the head of lower elementary at North American International School. Natasha, thank you so much for being with us today. I've had the privilege of working with Natasha for over, 4 years now?
6 years now.
Six years now. And it's always been a delight. We always learn so much from Natasha and we get inspired. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. And also with us today is Ms. Yasmin El-Saeed. She is the early childhood consultant that we had the privilege of meeting back in Saudi Arabia in 2022. We saw the great work you were doing there. Yasmin is a co-founder of the Early Childhood Center at Neom Community School in Saudi Arabia, a former co-founder. And we are glad that you have now moved to the UAE and you're going to be closer to us and we'll be able to work with you and learn from you as well. So delighted to start our podcast today. We'll begin with a question that we like to ask all our educators because there is a reason why we are here today, all of us, and that is our why. So we would like to ask you, Yasmin, if we could begin with you, if you could tell us why you got into early childhood education and what brought you to this line of work.
Well, thank you so much for having me today, and it's absolute pleasure to see you guys again. And why? That's actually a really good question. Technically, I'm supposed to work in a bank. And after I graduated, we have to do a little bit of training in a bank in order to get your graduation project. It didn't work out for me. I was like, no, that is very boring. Sitting in an office, the whole country's on debt. It's not for me. And then I started to look out for different things out there. And one of them, I've tried sales, I've tried marketing. And then one of them was actually to just volunteer in a Montessori nursery. Mm-hmm. And I went there as a volunteer and I absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun. I really enjoyed it that I left and I didn't feel that it was work. I actually enjoyed it. And I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do. And then I started taking my training. Mm-hmm. And from volunteering, I started as a co-teacher, a teacher, and then moved here to Dubai 2015. Started again from beginning because I had to do my cash 3 and done my observations. And then moved to Saudi Arabia after doing cash 5. Opened the first nursery with 300 children. Wow. And then I moved back here. Amazing. So it just enjoying seeing children every day having fun through learning has kept me really going. And I want to do more. How can I support? Right, I'm going to study and do cash 5 during COVID while doing online classes. And I was a teacher and I was still enjoying it because I know that later on there is more that I can do. Mm-hmm. And then with no plan, just Neom came my way and it was the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Wonderful.
And here I am now.
Amazing.
Back to my second home, UAE.
Excellent. So good to have you here with us.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you and learning from you more.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Natasha, if I may ask you the same question.
Yeah. So kind of how you talked about working in a bank, my degree is in psychology. Mm-hmm. So I always knew that I wanted to do something in the line of working with children. I just didn't know what it was. So I kind of bounced around and got between social work and psychology, and then finally ended up getting a degree in adolescent psychology. And then I moved to the UAE, and I ended up working in a nursery and absolutely fell in love.
Wow.
I was working with FS1 at that time, and just that kind of imagination and that wonder that they come in with, I think it makes you sort of look at the world through new eyes again, because they're so innocent, and like it kind of makes you appreciate things through their eyes again. And so I was like, this is really what I want to do. And then I started working in a school as a teacher, and then got pulled out of the classroom in September of 2019 because we didn't have a head of section at that time. So they pulled me out for that, which is kind of how I moved into that leadership position. And then the world went into lockdown 6 months later.
Wow.
And then during COVID, while we were doing online schooling, they added grade 1 and grade 2. So now I'm the head of lower elementary, and it's just been really nice because you kind of get to watch their progression out of KG into that sort of still very early childhood, because I don't think people really think about grade 1 and 2 in that early childhood capacity, but they're all still kind of learning, figuring their world out. So that's been me.
Amazing, amazing. And a question that comes to mind, because being a teacher by profession, I have worked with different age groups. So I have worked with adult students and then teenagers as well. And every age group is fascinating, and there are challenges that come with it, and there are your highs, and then there are some sort of, difficulties. And but when it comes to early childhood, what is that unique thing as a teacher, as an educator, that you say that, oh, this is the age group I want to stick with. This is what I want to do.
For me, I definitely think it's kind of touching back on what I said. It's that way that everything is new to them, and they're kind of exploring the world, and I think you get to explore the world all over again with them. And it's sweet because you get to watch their language develop, but you get to watch their personalities develop, and their wit, and kind of like that first moment when they realize what a joke is, and then they kind of like figure that out. And I think all of those things are really, really beautiful to watch and to kind of experience with them. So that's what I enjoy with that early childhood.
Beautiful.
I agree with you 100%. It's when you actually also see them in June and July graduating and standing and performing an entire play, and you're standing at the back trying not to cry, but you've witnessed that development and growth. You see them the first day they're settling in, how it was a little bit challenging to go through the routine and understand the routine and accept it. And then standing on a stage performing, it's just amazing to see. So that achievement, you feel like, right, we've done it. We've absolutely ticked every single box, and you are ready to go and the sky is not even the limit for you. We've done our job.
Wow.
It's I can't describe it, but it feels amazing.
I can completely understand and relate to it as well. So moving forward, I think Bushra has a couple of questions for you as well.
Yeah, I just want to note that when you start these podcasts, you have a moment of apprehension, what's going to happen, and then their guests start introducing themselves, and you're like, you're with your people. You're with people. Their journeys resonate with you. For example, Yasmin, I trained as an economist, and my dream was to become an economist, and I started in consulting. But the world of education just kept drawing me, and so what you both said about what you love about education was just like, So thanks a lot for sharing that. Now let's dive deeper into this world of early childhood education. The world of education in general, maybe just the world in general, is being shaken up by so many innovations, transformations, research coming out, when we understand the human brain and human development a whole lot better. So when we talk about trends in early childhood education or shifts in early childhood education, what are some of the key ones that come top of mind for you or that have impacted your practice in the field? You can take a minute if you need it.
I think one of the things that's been an interesting shift in the UAE specifically is more of that increase in bilingual education for early childhood specifically. Because, I mean, Yasmin, you've been in Saudi, you've been here, and I think you can kind of attest to that fact because I arrived in Dubai in 2013, so we've kind of more or less been here at the same time. And I think there used to be a really big push towards English in schools, and a lot of the Arabic that happened in early childhood happened at home. And so now I think what's happening is there's that really kind of beautiful shift towards an increase in bilingual education and kind of offering children at younger and younger ages opportunities to do more languages, whether it's Arabic or French or Urdu or whatever it might be. But I think it helps because educators, I think, are now realizing that, you know, as you talk about the world being shaken up, that it is becoming smaller, and exposing children at an earlier age to different languages, I think, inherently makes them more tolerant, and it exposes them to different cultures through the use of language. So I think definitely that shift in a bilingual focus within schools, so offering languages at an earlier age, has been a really prominent trend, and it's one that I think is going to continue to be really important. And it's really lovely to see the children kind of, as they're learning English, also learning an additional language in addition to that.
There's so much research coming out too about the importance of bilingual education, or how it can make a student develop more strongly as opposed to in a single language context. Yasmin, anything you want to add to that? Any shifts you see?
100%. Do you remember when you said that you're with your people? Exactly what I was thinking. And it's the first time I meet you today. But it's the same thing that what comes in my mind, because that massive shift in terms of diversity and celebrating different cultures and bringing in different languages and also adding in inclusion, that has definitely shifted the early childhood in a different ballgame, because you are learning about different cultures and you're accepting different cultures and backgrounds, and bringing that in to the classroom and in a setting is very, very important. We celebrate, how many days do we celebrate? And I absolutely love that. And I've learned so many days and special days here in Dubai. And we celebrate everything. We celebrate from the Festival of Lights to, we call it Pumpkin Day. And then you celebrate the Flag Day, and you celebrate Teacher's Day, Teacher Assistant Day, and you every single day is literally a celebration. I was doing that with my team yesterday, looking at events and just looking at it and the diversity, and looking at the children's nationalities and where they are coming from, and how the teacher talk about it in the classroom, and where the background, what is the dress code, and we all celebrate it, and we talk in different languages. It's just beautiful. In every setting, you have over 40 nationalities. For me, that is everything for a child. When we travel, he plays with anyone and everyone because he's used to that. And even if he cannot communicate in the same language, they use sign language to just point at the mud and go there. I'm like, now. So anyone will understand that language. But to adopt that in your setting is very important, and bringing in Arabic, bringing in English, and how it affects children's brain development. 2-year-olds can actually, and 3-year-olds can actually go up to 5 or 6 languages. And I've had a child that I was teaching was speaking 3 languages.
Wow.
He would speak to me in English, replies back to dad in Portuguese, and replies back to mom in Russian. And he would say banana in Arabic. And I would be just looking at him. I'm so proud that your mind is able to shift from one language to another, and you can play and communicate. That is also how you prepare children for life. You put them in any environment and they adapt.
Absolutely.
So it is very, very important.
And just to add to that, the fact that we live in Dubai, in the UAE, a place that I think it takes pride, and it should take pride in its diversity. So the kind of experience that we are offering our children, or for that matter, what we had when we were growing up over here, that's amazing, and it's very unique. So as you said, that once you've had that kind of experience, then you can go anywhere in the world. The tolerance that you develop, the understanding of other cultures and languages and people, and you eventually understand that everybody is the same.
Yeah.
It's really seeking the same things in life. So it's a great place, I always say, to bring kids up. Because the kind of experiences that you can offer them.
Absolutely, yes.
So in terms of like languages was something that you were mentioning, and we also feel that it is important that we are on it. So we have to develop the children in different ways, right? So academic skills is one, language skills would be another, but then there's the social emotional skills, and there are different ways of ensuring that the child is on track, the child is developing the way that he or she is supposed to. So on those notes, what kind of evidence-based practices do you think are becoming more relevant for early childhood? How are you ensuring or assessing these students to make sure that they are on track? So I could start with Natasha.
So I would say, obviously, in our setting, I think I'm sort of always on the fence about this, because whenever I say, diagnostic and baseline testing, I'm kind of like, but they're so small. But then another part of it is, I think that's also been like that shift in education, is that you are doing baseline and diagnostic testing in a different way now, right? Like, it's a lot more observational and things like that than here's a paper and a pencil, sit and write with me for an hour. So I think that doing screening and kind of doing observations in that way has been important. I know at our setting and this is how you and I met, we've been using Brigance for years, and that's something that has been really, really important for us, just because it allows you to do quite a lot of observational opportunities after that initial kind of like 15-20 minute screening that you do. And it allows teachers, I think even new teachers, it allows them the opportunity to kind of have their own baseline of what they're looking for when they're doing their observations. And I think that that's important, because screening is only as effective as the educator's hands that you're putting it into. And if the educator doesn't have the tools to be able to do that screening or observation system effectively, then I think you're not in turn benefiting the child. So I like the ease that screening systems like Brigance offer, and that it kind of gives the teachers a step-by-step until they feel comfortable enough to then kind of make those tweaks and do their own observations and do their own kind of like formative assessments that are more ongoing, and that I think are in general more beneficial towards early childhood children in that age group anyway.
Excellent, thank you.
No, yes, I agree with you 100%. Completely different how you screen a child or how you're doing an assessment in early years. You can't give them a piece of paper and a pencil and sit down and bless them. Yeah. they can't even hold a pencil yet.
Course.
So you do it in terms of observation, and you observe them in different timings of the day and in different activities, whether outdoors, indoors, sensory, and so on. And you then have a chat with the teacher or with the parent who need be. And it is very, very important to make sure that we know how to support children in terms of observation to actually put them on the right path. If we don't do observation and if we don't check that development, let's say every 4 weeks or every 3 weeks, how would we know what the child needs supporting in? But because you have that in place and you have all the data, you are able to actually put a plan in place to support that child. So in terms of observation, planning, assessing, and teamwork is everything. And then you'll have that child, if you need to involve parents, or if you need to have an IEP, or if you need to have a next step or involve anyone else, then you're on the right track so that eventually that child is supported.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the fact, what do you think is the role of the parent in this process, or how have expectations evolved, around parental engagement, around information?
I think parental involvement is really important because, I don't know, like my philosophy is always that there should be a bridge between home and school. And like, so whenever, especially when we're talking about like FS1 or KG1, I kind of always tell them, talk to us about what you're doing at home. And so we can talk to you about what we're doing at school. Like, let's find that middle ground, because I kind of always think about how jarring it must be as a 3 and a 4-year-old to be like, to kind of just be figuring the world out, and then just be like figuring out the expectations at home, and then you come to school and somebody expects something completely different from you, and then 5-6 hours later you're back at home with another set of expectations. And I'm like, if that's enough to make my head spin, I wonder how it would be for a 4-year-old. So I think parental involvement is really important, just kind of in bridging that gap and saying like, okay, what are we doing that works? What are you doing at home that works? Because you know your child the best, and kind of trying to make that even out, I think helps. The other thing that I think is really important with parental involvement is it's much easier to have those harder conversations if you've built a positive relationship with your parents. And so if, you're kind of talking about observation and things like that, it's much easier to say, hey, I might have a concern here, but we are still monitoring if you've already built a positive relationship, as opposed to getting an email and saying, hi, Natasha, your son or your daughter has 1, 2, 3 concern. We'll talk in 6 weeks. I don't necessarily think that sets anyone up for a positive experience. And I think it makes everyone nervous, and then that child feeds off of that anxiety. So I think it just kind of creates that disbalance. So parents, I love parental support. I'm always like, my door's open, call me, talk to me, let's communicate, because that child is yours, but we kind of adopt them for those like 6 to 8 months.
Yes.
And you build that relationship with them. So I think that's vital.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Without parent support, it's not a complete chain. And I always say it's not just home alone or the teacher alone. We can't have, create miracles at school. Mm-hmm. It needs to be connected with home as well. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. It's that tone and that positive relationship that you build with a parent, because that partnership is very important. If I receive an email like that, I'm going to have an anxiety. I'm going to be very upset. Every time I drop my child to the teacher, I'm going to feel, I won't have any eye contact. I'm stressed out. I'm taking it out on my child. That whole set of tone is negative, which exactly we need to step away from. You need to have that positive, it's called positive relationship and positive partnership, because at the end of the day, both school and parents have the same goal. Yes. It's for the child and what we can do best for the child. We go through all these research and all these inspections and all of that understanding to make sure that we're providing the best for every single child to help them reach their potential. So what I always say to everyone and to all the parents, when parents say, I'm so sorry if I'm complaining, or I'm very sorry if I speak to you every day, I tell them, listen, if you're not going to question and complain about the things that are happening, and if you're not going to look after your child, who will?
Yeah.
You have that responsibility, because that child can't have that fight at the moment, or can't question that at the moment. It's you. So 100%, our doors are open anytime, and because that is our profession. That is our study. We know maybe something perhaps that they read about it or they Googled it and it's completely different, but then they sit with us, they're like, yes, absolutely, we'll just do 1, 2, 3, let's try this one, and then we'll get back, we'll sit down together again 4 weeks. And parents be like, really, that's it? I'm like, did you Google it? And It's completely different because whether it's their first child, or at the end of the day, we've studied it.
Yeah.
We've seen how many children we can't count. We've seen thousands and thousands of children, and every single child is different. Every
True.
single child need is different. Every parent need is different. Sometimes we need to settle in parents and not children. But again, it is our job, and we are trained to how to deal with that and how to support the whole family, again, for the same goal and outcome for the child.
Again, amazing and so inspiring always to hear educators like yourselves speak about how passionately you're here to support the parents, the children, the families. How do you ensure that your teachers are also up to speed with how to manage each and every parent, each and every student, the needs that they have? And secondly, if there is a sensitivity, right? So if there is a problem that you see, then how do you approach the parents for that? Do you use data? Do you use reports? Or you prefer just a one-on-one, chat about it? How do you manage it?
You want to take that one?
I'm happy to do so. One-to-one.
Okay.
I love one-to-one. I'll be like, right, do you have 5 minutes? Oh, no, Yasmin, I have to in a meeting. Right, during pickup? Absolutely during pickup. And I'll have that one-to-one. We've observed, and we wanted to talk to you about something. At the end of the day, we're here to support. But as parents and as women, we have that gut feeling that that person in front of you wants to help. It's that gut feeling. But if it's just a tick to a box, they're going to feel it as well. So if you're genuine, they're going to feel it. And it's always, having one-to-one has always achieved the outcome. And it's been amazing. And then I'll follow up. Obviously, with the email, we would need 1, 2, 3. If you can help us, that would be great. If you need anything, come and speak to me. And if I need to address anything else, it's one-to-one. Having that one-to-one conversation, first of all, sets that positive tone. And second of all, sets that, right, it's not just a number under the roof. That's a child, all right? We're talking about their development. We're talking about their growth. We're talking about a child that is going to grow into a young adult and one day become a member in the society. Yes, this is what we're dealing with now, to make sure that they are a positive member in the society. So it's a long life learning. It's not just early years. You're graduated, right? Goodbye. The next batch come in and let's go. Yeah. It's never like that. How many times if you seen a child outside and you feel like you remember everything and you just have a flashback of all the details that you've went through. So it's having that one-to-one conversation. And it's the same with teachers, because all the teachers that are in this profession, they really love what they do and they want the same outcome. So as long as leaders, and you know that as well, that they know that we support them and we are in that meeting with them, that's the most important thing. It's not like, right, you're gonna have that meeting, let me know how it goes. It's not, because we're the leaders, and we are running an entire operation with whether 200 or 150 children with parents. So we've been into those situations several times, and we know how we are going to handle it. And when are we going to be firm, and when are we going to pull back, and when we're going to move a step forward, and so on. But one-to-one conversations and having those genuine conversation, and again, it's the child's development. That's our one and only goal.
Superb.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think also what's important is, like you mentioned, is follow through, right? So that I always try, like when I have conversations, to kind of sandwich it. So I always, try to make it explicit that it's not the child that has done something wrong, but it's the action that we're talking about. And I think differentiating those and letting the parent know that, this one action or whatever is not now going to affect the way that we see the child. I think having parents understand that every day is a clean slate is really important, because I think it helps with that anxiety of, am I ever going to be able to bring my child back to this building again? So I think that helps. But I think the same is true for teachers, that you set a space to allow people to make mistakes, but you also kind of make those expectations clear. And I always kind of think about, I don't have children of my own, but I kind of always think about it, especially at our school, because my first KG1 class is now going to grade 7, which is very surreal for me, but it's a big sibling school. So I've taught a lot of their siblings, or a lot of their siblings are in my department, and I kind of always look at it with the parents that I think it doesn't matter how many children you've reared, each one is so different that it's kind of like you're doing it all over again for the first time each time. And I try to keep that in mind, that when they come in, I think, parents are kind of always expecting that you're going to say the worst about their child. So they come in kind of with that anxiety. And I think it's really important to have those genuine one-on-one conversations. Tell them, I love your child. Here's all the things that your child does that are amazing, but here's the things that we are trying to work on, and kind of setting those expectations. And then I think holding firm to that and having clear follow through is also really important. So they don't feel like, Natasha just called me in to tick a box and then we're never going to talk about this again. So I think all of those things also help parents be more on board, but I think it also helps your teachers be more on board, because everyone's kind of on that same end goal of doing the best that they can do for the children in their care.
There's
that's
a
amazing,
question
yeah.
I've sort of been itching to ask. It's kind of related and not on the pre-planned list, but I'm just going to ask because I think curious about it. We talked about the value of diversity earlier and how great it is, but can it be a challenge, especially when you're trying to communicate across cultures, across various understandings? And how do you, more than that, we know it can be a challenge. How do you navigate that challenge? You're working with parents from different backgrounds, different expectations, different understandings. What are some tips and strategies you would offer to other leaders and teachers in the space? And it's a tough one. Sorry.
That's actually a really good question, because living in the UAE, in every setting, you would have more than 40 nationalities, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with all of them. So, like I said, it's that you want to communicate for their children's best of interest and for their children's needs, to be able to provide the right environment and right positive environment for them. And that's actually a funny question, because I was in that situation and the parent doesn't speak English and nor Arabic. And this is when I used a translator for the first time. And then I said, hi, can please ask da 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 da. And then I translated it to the parent. She's like, yes, that would work. I was like, brilliant, thank you. And that was it. So I've asked a question, I've communicated to the parent, and then it was great. So if we're going to bring communication, if we have like a sort of type of challenge, it would be obviously not like a quick translate go, but I'm sure we would plan for it weeks and weeks and days, and this is what I'm going to say, and if I know someone or if I can translate it, it's a lot of research, but it's the effort and it's the steps that we need to go through to meet the parent and where they are, because if they can't communicate, and if they can't communicate with you in English or Arabic, it is our actually job to make sure that they are communicated to and catered for. It's part of the job. It would make us work so much in terms of what is the right thing, and I need to make sure that when I'm translating it, it's not offensive in their language. So how am I going to make sure that it's done in a positive way? And you just research, and then you sit down and you have that same genuine talk. Your child has developed in 1, 2, 3. We see them enjoying 4, 5, 6, but we do have few things that we want to work on together. And that would be it. But 100%, it is part of our job to make sure that we are communicating to every single parent, regardless the language.
Right. And as a parent, I do feel that parents, everybody is, but when you become a parent, there's that intuitiveness that comes to you, especially when it comes to your child and to the safety of the child and the well-being. So if you see at school that the teachers or the leadership, they're coming from a good place, So that faith is there, that they're coming from a good place and now they're trying to help. And then when you see a process, when you see a methodical approach towards addressing whatever the challenge is, or whatever the positives or any challenges, so that faith develops between the parent and the school and the teachers, etc. So I think it is important, like you said, if the heart is in the right place, and everything else falls into place.
Beautiful, like human connection at the end of the day.
Exactly. And it is all about connection. I mean, the industry we are in, you can't do without it.
Exactly.
You know, it's all about working from the heart, of course.
100%.
That's interesting. We're talking about language, communication, human connection, because as an education services company that takes a lot of pride in being based here and serving the needs of the region, but also being a bridge between best practices and international programs, top-rated programs, and our region, we're constantly thinking about how to build that bridge and how to make those practices, that research, those programs relevant and useful and adaptable for the spaces that we're in. So these are all really relevant things. For example, we've had Brigand for several years and we've seen its impact in the region in different contexts, whether it's a school or an early childhood center. But now we're so keen to take it a step further, where we want to adapt it, we want to translate it, we want to localize it, we want to create a new platform around it. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us, and it's good for us to know that those are the type, it aligns with the strategies leaders take and need to help make those best practices a reality and help foster the best learning path for students as well. So my next question along those lines is, what does early childhood intervention mean to you? What is its significance in what you do? Because intervention is a relatively new term in the region, and it's a scary term. That's something that I've experienced myself working in the K-12 space with educators. So what does that mean in the early childhood context? And what is its importance for you?
I think, well, first of all, what I will say is it is a relatively new term, but I think it's also very quickly become a buzzword. And I think it's important to not get caught up in just kind of like throwing the word intervention around, but really thinking about what is it meant to do. And I think in an early childhood space, like you and your teachers and your team, you are the foundation. If you don't lay a strong foundation in literacy, math, personal, social, and emotional skills, like you are doing those children a disservice. And I think the same can be said for intervention. I think early intervention is paramount and it's vital. Kids, yes, you take whatever it is, the 4 to 6 weeks to kind of do your observations, to do all of those things, but you're doing all of that with a purpose, which is to try to offer children the help that they need at a younger age to set them up for success as they grow older. And I think it's kind of one of those things that if you catch it when it's small enough, then you are helping that child to succeed later in life. So I think it's really important to kind of think about early childhood and early childhood intervention as that step in and that building block to allow a child to be successful and to close those gaps as they get older.
Absolutely. Yes. So you said the right term in terms of the teachers are the base, and the teachers would do all that observations at the beginning, and then they would meet with the leaders. Oh, we've realized this and this and this, how are we going to move forward? Okay, we meet with the parents, we've actually realized that, and that actually happened when I was a teacher many years ago. And during that meeting, the parent took the child to the pediatrician, and they found out that there is water behind the ears. That's why there was, bless him, he couldn't hear, so he couldn't talk.
Yeah.
That's why he couldn't hear me when I was calling his name. And after the surgery and after recovering at the end of the year, that child was communicating in full sentences, has made so much friendships in the classroom. And that outcome kind of proved to me how having that positive relationship with parents, how communicating with parents, talking to each other in terms of what's happening inside the classroom, And when you ask the mom, yes, it's happening sometimes at home. When I call him, he doesn't hear me. And the child was 2. So that both of us communicated, we worked together, and then that went to get it checked, and then so that's early intervention as well. So not straight to, right, it's delay in speech, let's go make speech therapy. It doesn't really work that way, because this is, I feel, it's a very sensitive subject that certain individuals will just start diagnosing, and we don't diagnose. There could be so many things. There are so many factors for a child would be not developing in any area, whether it's social, emotional, physical development, or sensory. There are so many aspects. It's not just one. So having that partnership and communicating, having that positive relationship is very important, because like I said, I will always circle back to our main goal is the child's development. So when we communicate and we have that early intervention, you basically help the child to develop in a lot of areas, and to move to school, and to become a young adult, and so on, and to live their life. So early intervention is very, very important.
I think it's always interesting, because I'm sure you've seen it, like, you know, you kind of will say, oh, you know, I might have a concern here, but then when you start doing your observations and stuff, sometimes all it is time, right?
Correct.
And so you kind of look at your notes from 4 or 6 weeks ago, and you're like, this is not the same child. But I think having that ability to kind of have that early intervention in place and say, okay, because, you know, I think having teachers that are also trained in classroom intervention is sometimes vital, because sometimes it's as small as the child has just never been to school before, and it's not that they need, you know, additional speech therapy or support or whatever. It's just that they genuinely don't know what you want from them. And so sometimes just that time, and offering that time, and trying these different kind of interventions and things within the classroom is sometimes just enough to get that child to where they need to be. But I think it's funny sometimes when you kind of look at the beginning of the year, and then you look at them 6 weeks later, and you're like, no, I don't think that I need to say anything anymore. Like, they're fine now.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And that would bring me to my next question. In terms of assessing the child or monitoring progress, let's say, so as Yasmin, you said that you can't really, and we've read that, you know, in multiple places, and we've heard that you cannot be saying that a child has XYZ developmental issue till the child is 7 years old, right? But having said that, there are developmental milestones that you need to be monitoring, you need to be tracking. So how important is screening or assessment in your experience? How often should screening be administered, for example, in one academic year? And how much importance can you give to that screening?
So, like you said, we can't, well, I think there's a little bit of controversy over there, because it's either you don't diagnose until the child is 7, but at the end of the day, it's not like you move your hands and then like, right, I can't like make any notes or anything until they're 7 because I can't. No, but there's observations. You need to put the child into different environments to see how are they going to act and how are they developing and so on. So you are doing screening every day without realizing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in terms of observation, okay, this didn't work. Right, let's try another plan. Okay, that actually worked. And the child, okay, all right, so I'm going to enhance that activity and make it a little bit more challenging. And then I'm going to see, because like you said, sometimes it's time.
Yeah.
So the reason I believe why they said until 7 is because that gives enough time for the child to develop in their own pace and on their own time. So you would do a screening or an assessment for a child before they enter a certain age group, and the screening or the assessment is to understand where the child is at when they've joined. It's not to say yes or no. In some schools, it might be the yes or no. In some settings, might not be. But we want to collect data. Where is the child at this moment? And then we go through the whole plan, the curriculum, the early learning goals, and so on. and then you do the assessment again at the last term, and then you see the difference. There is a massive difference because you've already, from that assessment, you've already taught all of those the areas of development, whether it's mathematics or expressive arts and design, or being imaginative, being creative, writing a story on their own from their own imagination, being creative, unlocking that creativity. You've already seen it, so you are doing screening almost every day without realizing. So during that constant observation from one area to another, one environment to another, you will then know if the child needs more than just a setting screening. If you want to have an outside support, that will happen because you are doing that constant observation, the ongoing observation.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that, you're right. I think you are doing screening every day, and it's sometimes even instantaneous, right? Like when you are doing an activity and you're like, oh, that's not working, that's screening. And so when you make that shift, and so I think it happens, on paper you might do it at the beginning or the end of the year, but you're doing it constantly. And when you kind of, like I said, when you make those shifts or whatever, but you're also, I think, trying to see, are there specific instances that just don't work for a specific child or for a group of students? And then when you kind of immediately make that shift and go, oh, I know that they're not into sensory, or sand play, so I'm going to now try a different sensory tactic to figure out, is it the sand that's setting them off, or is it all sensory things? And then you're kind of like making your notes, and then every single time you set out those activities and those kind of subtle shifts that teachers make within the classroom, I think those are all screening abilities and screening factors that nobody really thinks about because it's not in a screener, like it's not in a screener book. But I think teachers do so much screening and they get to know their kids so well that when you have those conversations, kind of even going back to that early intervention, they don't have to sit and kind of tick off and go, oh, Natasha's not meeting this developmental milestone or this one, but she is meeting this one. They can instead tell you, she seems to really not enjoy sensory, but it's only, let's say, wet spaghetti. She seems to be okay with dry sensory things. So what might that be? And I think kind of those shifts that happen within their classrooms, and looking at screening in that kind of different lens is also really important.
That's what I love about the nuanced difference between screening and assessment. Because screening is sort of like a softer detection as opposed to an assessment being some sort of labeling of or stamping a measurement of a child's ability, whereas screening is sort of detecting what may be going on and planning for what steps to take accordingly. And I loved your insight on how intervention is not, the buzzword may imply something else, but intervention is not about making a mountain out of a molehill. It's about seeing what specific, detecting something and then trying to investigate further and trying different strategies to be able to ultimately focus on the child's development. So I think that was very interesting to hear your perspective on that.
No, we are actually so enlightened now, knowing that the efforts that we are going to be putting in the next few months in bringing a tool to you that would really help all your efforts and the initiatives that you are taking and your teachers are taking. We do understand we are running out of time. But there is so much to talk about, and it's always so enlightening to learn about all the good work that you're doing. Do we have time for our little game, perhaps?
I think, we have time for a little game. I'm sure the 10 questions I have won't work.
We got a thumbs up.
Maybe the 10 questions won't work, but we'll stick with 3 or 4. So we have a little game we like to end our podcast with, which is called Yes and No. So you see a little blackboard in front of you on a popsicle stick, and then you have a piece of chalk. And I'm going to just ask you a question, and you can take a minute to write down your response, and then I'll say 1, 2, 3, and you can show us what your response was. Okay. Right? So it's just so that we don't influence each other's responses. That's why we use this approach. All right. So the first question, and it's super controversial, but let's see what you have to say. Should early childhood education focus more on play or academics?
So we choose
or
play or academics.
Yes, you
Okay.
can say play or academics. Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. Play.
Yeah. P as in play.
That is actually very smart.
do we need to discuss this one, or I guess it's kind of obvious
yeah,
why
I
that's
think
the
it's-
case.
I mean, we can stay here for another 30
I
minutes.
know.
I think you will approve.
I have opinions.
All right. So, okay. Should early childhood programs include mindfulness or meditation practices? Yes or no?
Oh.
1, 2, 3. Yes. I should ask more controversial
Yeah,
questions.
these are, I think, a unanimous
Okay,
yes.
maybe this
to
one's
all.
a bit controversial. Should preschoolers be assessed on their academic progress? Yes or no?
This is a controversial
It is
one.
controversial, but
Yeah.
I'm still thinking
No
about
comments.
it.
I've got 3
Very
kids, and I was very
controversial.
hard on them about their academics when they were growing up. So
But this is why there's a massive because you want to understand the children's development,
Yeah.
but you don't want to put them under pressure and the parents under pressure.
Yeah.
Because I remember that if you just said you put your 3 children under pressure because you want the best for them, you want them to succeed and move on to the next year. And I remember I used to
absolutely.
traumatize my child for the spelling because we've got spelling on Friday.
Absolutely.
Have to get it
Remember,
done.
we've
You
got
have to
12
ace it.
words.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my. But the process, he's already in school every day. We're already doing practicing so that also physically and mentally they're matching in terms of development. And we're trying to socialize and do the reading, the library books, swimming, and also do spelling every day.
Yeah.
It is so much. It is so much. So that's why it's a massive. You want to understand their development and move from one year to another, but the process is painful.
yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to add anything to that, Natasha?
I
Up
just
to you.
think, it's interesting because I think sometimes, especially with the younger kids, like the preschool kids or whatever, parents will come in and they'll be like, well, they just play all day. But I think there's so much to be said for how they play. And when you watch that shift from side-by-side play to those interactions, or when we take them to the creative role play room and you kind of see their imagination and their stories build. Like, no, it's not traditional, does he know his numbers 1 through 10, but how many kids have you seen that know their numbers and can read by 4 but don't know how to make friends? And I think that's also really important. Like, yes, he can read, it's fantastic, but you also have to prepare him for the other side of life, which is that he or she knows how to make a friend and not just read a textbook. And I think there's
100%.
Yeah.
a balance that has to happen.
As in, it's important, but it's not the only important thing.
Yeah.
No,
And
at
maybe it's
end
not
of
the most
day,
important thing.
No, and it's preschool. Like, they will do it again next year.
Ah,
And the important
right.
thing is they can socialize, they can make friends, they can open their own juice box. They can ask to go to the washroom if they need to go to the washroom. Like, those things for me are a lot more important than, can you tell me what letter this is at 4 years old?
Absolutely. Helping yourself and being independent is everything. You're setting them up for life. You're not setting them up for for just 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
We are setting children up for life. And that's what I wish everyone out there would understand, and only people who are, or educators will understand that we're not setting them up. The reason why I want them to learn to put their socks and shoes, it's not because I can't help them, but if I do it for them, they're never going to learn. So, but if a parent comes, just put it on for them. Like, I'm happy to do it.
Right.
I'm an adult and I'm happy to support, but when is the child ever going to learn to put it on themselves?
Yes.
Wow.
So it's great because it's not the what, it's the how.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So it's really enlightening to learn that as educators, as leaders, you are now educating the parents as well.
Yes.
And we as parents and others, in other industries, we also understand that if a little child, if a preschooler does not get the spelling right, it's okay. It's just the beginning of their lives.
Yeah.
I rather they are happy. I rather have a happy child,
Yeah.
and hearing those laughs and they come and give you a massive hug,
Yeah.
rather
That's
than
more
they knowing
important.
their numbers. Because a happy child, they are going to learn, and I always say that. I need to see a happy child in a
Yes.
positive environment, and you're gonna see them how they are flying through the numbers, the literacy, the reading, the writing. Happy child, a positive environment, they will learn and grow.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think, going back to what you're saying about setting them up for life, I think there's also been a shift that it's not all about academics. Like, what is your passion? What else are you good
Yes.
at?
Yeah.
How do we pull that out of you? Like, not everyone is going to, be the best or the top of the class or whatever. And I think that's what I try to tell parents, and kind of that shift that's also happened, because it hurts my soul when you have to put marks in for a preschooler or a kindergartner. I'm like, but what are you grading?
Yeah.
What are you grading? And so I think that shift is also really important, and I think as that shift is happening in education, I think parents are coming more on board with it as well, and that kind of idea of what is developmentally appropriate versus, did my 5-year-old get a 95 in English? What does that mean?
Absolutely,
I 100% agree with you. And one last thought before you stop us or you pull the plug. The other day, I was just thinking, why wouldn't schools put in their curriculum how boys and girls change attire?
Yeah.
Why don't we have that? That would be, you're teaching them
life
engineering
skill,
and
yeah.
at the same time
How to
a
make
life
a budget,
skill.
Yeah.
like how to make a budget.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and
Financial literacy.
how to build a business,
Yeah.
and that's mathematics. So it's out there, but teaching them a life skill and not just sitting at a desk. Like it's we're not, children and human beings are not meant to be sitting down, especially children. I'll be fidgeting all day. I'm fidgeting now. I don't know how it was still that hour, but imagine a child. They want to move and run and explore and jump and hide and all of that. So I'm really hoping that the school system and the education system would add more things as important as academics as well, but also life skills, and they will see the amount of, in terms of development, that their children who are not academics, how are they going to grow and develop mentally?
Absolutely.
100%.
And thank God for being in the 21st century and for having educators like yourselves
Exactly.
who are now pushing this thought as well, that there's so much else to learn in life than just academics.
100%.
So thank you so much, Natasha and Yasmin.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure, so much learning that went in today. So thank you for sharing. And Bushra, thank you for being a great host as always.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you all, and until next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.